Peace and love, family. Before we get tonight's broadcast started, I wanted to make a quick announcement. On Saturday, September the 25th, from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., Reality Speaks, Brother Jabbar Nator and myself and Brother Sundiata, we are bringing Dr. Boyce Watkins to Baltimore to talk about how to develop the Black business mentality. All right. So right now, if you get your tickets, they're only $45. But, well, I'm sorry, it says $45 until August the 22nd. So that was the early bird special. So it says $50 now in advance and $60 at the door. Family, these tickets are going fast. And what I'm going to do is put a link. So after this broadcast is over tonight, I'll put a link in the description box that you can click to purchase your ticket. So thank you for joining tonight. I mean, I'm pumped up about what's happening tonight. You know, tonight I have one of our esteemed elders and master teachers, Mwalimu Baruti, with me tonight. He's been on the platform a few times. And tonight we're going to be discussing, you know, are white people humans? And I know some of you might say, Dr. Maat, of course they're humans. That's what science says. That's what science says. But what would our ancestors say? Ashe? So without further ado, let's get started. Peace and Black power.
Let's combat and fight back with maltracks. The war of the minds, they want control of the masses. And Common Core, they dumb us down in the classes. Without knowledge, we can't gain access. Build with the elders, take notes and write classics. We keep whining on the block, how it's gonna stop? Let's start supporting our own, make their supply drop. We buy stocks, then we buy blocks. Cause we know the truth and we tuned in to Dr. Maya.
A BB Fahode, a BB to me. Peace to all of my thinkers, truth speakers, and truth seekers. Welcome to another Truth to Power Talk with your sister, Dr. Maat. Thank you for joining another powerful discussion. And tonight I have with me another powerful guest, but he is no stranger to the platform, Baba Mwalimu Baruti. How are you doing tonight, Baba?
I'm doing excellent, Dr. Maat. And of course, as always, I appreciate being on. I appreciate the invite. And of course, I love to be in the presence of the warriors. I say a BB for Hodie.
A BB for Hodie, Bob. And thank you for always taking time out of your busy schedule, because you are an extremely busy person, but you always make time for the people in the community. And that's what I love about you and your compliment. You know, when we call, you all are right there, and we appreciate you, and we appreciate your hard work and dedication over the years. Family, take a moment out to thumb up this video tonight. Bob is going to be dropping a lot of powerful information. Share this video. So if you're watching on Facebook, share it. YouTube, share it. If you have an IG, share the video. Also, family, be sure to head on over to YouTube, type in Dr. Oya Maat. All right, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell so that as soon as I go live, you will be notified. Also, family, for some of you who have missed some of my previous Truth to Power talks, I have a playlist on my channel. I've brought on our greats, Dr. Malefe Asante, Dr. Wade Nobles, Dr. Sandy Darity, Dr. Rick Kittles, Dr. Julianne. I brought on all the greats, Professor James Smalls, Dr. Kaba Kamane. So be sure to check out the playlist. And also, family, join me on Sundays, each and every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the Read Book Club. In 2 weeks, we'll be starting our next book. It's called The Myth of Black Buying Power by Dr. Jared Ball. And so in 2 weeks, we will be reading that book. And so be sure to grab the book and join us on Sundays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So without further ado, Bob, I would like to read your bio. Okay. I would like to read your bio. Mwalimu K. Bomani Baruti is co-founder and co-director of Akabin Institute, a full-time independent African-centered homeschooling program, which just celebrated its 21st year. Well, I guess it's 22nd now, because this was last year. So 22nd year of service to our community. He has written and self-published 25 books addressing issues ranging from manhood to chess to the Middle Passage to relationships. He is a former faculty member of Chicago State University and Morehouse College. He has been married to Mama Ya Baruti, for 35 years, and they have one daughter, Alea, who lives with her husband and 6 children. So again, Baba, thank you so much for joining. I see the warriors are in the house. The warriors are in the building. Peace to the Melanated Cafe. He's a warrior, Baba.
Yes.
In Baltimore, strong warrior, strong African-centered warrior right there. Peace to you, Farnessa. Sakim Ra, peace to you. Brother Mathis, peace to you. Brother Thomas, peace to you. Brother Sun Lion, I appreciated you last night, King, being in the building for that heavy conversation. But peace to you, Brother Sun Lion. Peace to you, Lynn Mosley. Peace to you, Baba Sakim Ra. Peace to you, Sister Tiffany, and the young warrior. This is a young warrior right here, Baba. Young warrior Ryan Sealy. I think Brother Ryan is 21 years old. I believe. Ryan, let me know in the chat. I think he's 21. Brother Jeremy is in the building. Peace to you, Chris Johnson. He's in the building. And peace to you, Thomas Roundtree. All right, so we're going to get started, family. I thank you for joining. Again, please share the show. Let's get the numbers up. Let's get the views up. So I've been thinking about this for a long time, Baba. I had a conversation with Brother Asar Imhotep. This was a few years ago, and he picked my brain. He asked me, he said, are white people human to you? And I said, well, if you're talking, Western science would say yes, right? It would say yes, biologically, yes, physically, yes, these are, human beings. And I said, but to me, given their, the behavior, their behavior and their interactions with different groups of people, I would say no. But at that time, Baba, I wasn't speaking. I was just giving my opinion. I wasn't giving, I didn't have a framework for that. I was just giving my opinion. No, I don't think so. But then I know that our ancestors had a framework for how they determined whether someone was human or not. And so I thought about what he said, and then I started reading up, and lo and behold, in traditional African cultures, traditional African societies, where you were born, you just weren't a human being. You had to be socialized, right? You had to develop into one, or be developed or groomed into being a human being. So I'm gonna reach out to Baba and see if we can have this the discussion. Are white people, human? And so I reached out to you. You agreed to come on. Then we had to reschedule. And then when we rescheduled for 9/11. And you said, aha, you said, how ironic is it to have this conversation or that conversation on this day? And so my first question to you, Baba, is why did you say that? Like, why did you say, I mean, we know what happened in 9/11, the planes hit the 10 Twin Towers. And remember, the government told us that these were terrorists who did it, right? And so I just want to know from you, why did you say, it's ironic that we're having that discussion on this day?
Well, to me, everything, I'm a firm believer, if you will, that everything has to be understood in social and cultural context. Nothing can be understood outside of that. And on the day that happened, we were of course in class, and I was coming back from somewhere, and I found out about it because a Negro who lives across the street came running over, tears, flowing out of his eyes. They attacked us, and I'm like, I had no idea what he was talking about. And then of course I came inside, and ENI had the news on, and the students were listening, and they of course showed the plane, crashing into the building over and over and over and over and over again. But the students were puzzled. They were literally puzzled as to why anyone would do that to us. And by us, of course, they knew who we were and what we taught. Who would do that to America, i.e. who would do that to Europeans? We of course are confused sometimes, because we think that America is us, not understanding that this is theirs. This is their reality. They control this reality. They dictate this reality. So whoever does that is theirs. It's just like if you have a house and whatever you have in it, if you can't protect it, somebody can take it, then it's not yours. And this is not ours. We don't dictate anything here. We don't dictate anything at a higher level. I don't care if the one who looks like us becomes the commander in chief. If that individual decides to do something or say something or move in a way with the military, what have you, against European interests, he's not going to be chief of staff anymore. He's not going to be commander in chief anymore. That's
a fact.
Anyway, we spent the day going over history, explaining to them, assuming, and we were operating. We told them, you know, that you can speculate in all kinds of ways. There's all kinds of theories. We know that Europeans have done these things before in order to incite the population to war, or to make the population just, you know, concur with whatever, who they wanted to go out and to destroy. We know that there are all kinds of theories relative to this, and some not so theories. It depends upon who you are. But I say theory because I can't show you credible evidence that came out of Hitler's mouth or what have you that says we're going to set this on fire so that we can do this, even though we know that he did. And I'm not picking on Hitler, because Hitler is nothing but another white boy. The reason why he's written about so badly is because he lost.
Right.
Anyway, so we spent the day explaining, going back over, you know, things we had already talked about, but it was a beautiful opportunity to bring together the destruction that Europeans have wrought on this planet. The millions and millions and millions, the hundreds of millions of people who they have removed from existence permanently. And they want to give the impression that everybody loves them. I remember John Henry Clark making the point that Europeans can't understand when somebody doesn't love them. They don't get it, because they think that they have fooled everybody. They think that their propaganda machine or the rest of it fooled everybody. So programs like this shouldn't be in existence. We shouldn't be having these conversations, because, you know, we should have bought it like everybody else. We should just be just as mental as everybody else out here who believes them. So the understanding what they have done to the world makes me wonder why more damage hasn't been done, why more haven't been destroyed. You know, you said, and again, you got to sit back and itemize. I wanted years ago, and I didn't have the ability. I put it out as an idea, but it will require you researching all the way back to the beginning of their existence on this planet. Whether they came from elsewhere, they came from here. That's kind of irrelevant. But the beginning of the existence on this planet, I would love to see someone make a huge, maybe 8 foot by 4 foot map of the world, with those little teeny tiny lights, and have different colored lights, and have a legend at the bottom that indicates maybe white means 100,000 people, yellow means 200,000 people, you know, on up the different colors, and have a time-lapse map where it shows the destruction, the number of people Europeans have killed on this planet from then till now. You could see the lights moving in particular directions and where they were at and the damage that they were doing over this time. That would begin to give us an idea of how many people they have murdered just on the top. We're not going to talk about stealing resources. We're not going to talk about forced migration. We're not going to talk about enslavement. We're not going to talk about colonization. We're not talking about just the number of people they have just simply murdered on this planet. We're not even going to talk about the potential children from those people who were murdered, because when you murder a person who's before childbearing age, then everybody who they would have produced is gone. They won't come into existence. They understand this. They understand that that's one of the functions of police in this country. When you go after people, you go after the youngest people, because then you strip them of their future population.
Facts.
A brother was looking at that in terms of the African continent during the time of our enslavement. And I don't even want to play this game about we came over here free will, or we were never brought over here. The number, because the population on the Asian continent continued to grow during that time. The population on the European continent continued to grow at that time. During the time of our enslavement, our capture and our enslavement, the population on the African continent declined. It didn't continue to grow.
Right.
It declined because of the number of people who weren't able to have babies, weren't able to have children. So they weren't increasing the population. And we have to understand, if we just understood that one variable, murder. I don't want to call it death. We need to call it what it is. We're playing around words, and that's what they do to us with this human thing, with the civilization. They conceptualize words in such a way so that they scientifically conceptualize words in such a way so that they favor them in their definitions. So when we use these words, we're using their definitions along with these words. So I don't say they died or they, no, they were murdered. Our ancestors were murdered. Even those who jumped off the boats, they were murdered because the conditions made it necessary for that to happen. And they set the conditions to make that happen. So we just looked at from all kinds of groups, even groups that are allied with now. And we have to bear in mind, of course, as John Henrik Clarke said, we have no friends.
We have no friends. That's right.
We have no friends. If we just look at the number of people of who they murdered who were Asian, who are Middle Eastern, and of course, these individuals are fighting over who's going to be the imperialist power, and the number of people on the African continent. Okay, you have entire ethnic groups in Australia, Tasmania, et cetera, who no longer exist. There isn't that Jurassic Park, go find a mosquito that's got some, some of the genetic structure and you can rebuild these people. They're gone forever. From the islands, they're gone forever. Some of the people who lived in this country before, they're gone permanently. They're gone permanently. People being surprised because they're finding graveyards of indigenous children besides schools in Canada. They did this all over the world. They established these schools everywhere. They're still in place. Some of them we're now supporting and promoting as being places where our children should be voluntarily. But they did this all over the world. You get a taste of this in Rabbit-Proof Fence, what they were doing, what they did to the children in order to turn them against who they are, to turn them into individuals who had their whole world reconceptualized through European eyes. When we look at why 9/11 is so important relative to this, and I'm not talking about people get personally involved. Well, my niece was there, and that happened.
They sure did.
That's got nothing to do with global scale. That's micro thinking. Very, very micro thinking. Yes, that's a relative of yours, and yes, that hurts your heart. But if we're going to do a correct analysis of African people, then we need to understand why that happened at the macro level, not the micro level, but at the macro level. And if we understand, we ask ourselves, well, why would anybody do this if they really did it? If Europeans didn't do it to themselves in order to galvanize people toward more greater toward the war effort, which has been pointed out time and time again. There's never been a period of time where Europeans were not preparing for and engaged in war, or both. So we look at just the number of people who they've murdered on this planet, pretending that everybody's supposed to forget and forgive them. That's also promoted, which we don't have to talk about. We don't have to talk about how the propaganda in the media always has Africans on there after African is murdered by Europeans saying, I forgive. I'm trying to remember the last time I saw a European in the media who was shot by an African talking about I forgive. I don't know if I've ever seen that.
I have never seen it, Baba.
Yeah, I can't remember. My memory may not be that great, but I can't remember ever seeing that. But every time, and this is selective, and I'll tell you personally how selective this has become. When the Rodney King thing kicked in and the students in the Atlanta University Center went off, and the good thing about what happened was they targeted all non-Black stores in the area. That was good. That was good. That was a good thing that they did. But when it went off, I was the faculty at Morehouse, who the Channel 2, I believe Channel 2 News, came to our apartment to interview me on my thoughts on it. And of course, I gave the thoughts from our perspective.
I already know, Baba. I know you did.
Guess what didn't make it? Guess what didn't make it to the news? The only one that didn't make it to the news.
You
not that I expected, but that to me, okay, well, I thought it would be a little different. You're a professor at such and such a college, and people are supposed to respect you because you got your degrees and all the rest of this stuff. No, it's all political. So everything that we see in the media is very, very political in terms of the presentation. Why is it political? Because they need us to think a particular way. They need to control the way that we see them. It's got nothing to do with anything else except how we see them. Because if we see them in a particular way, then they can do things to us, and we will not believe that they're doing it to us. We'll believe it to ourselves. That's a major discussion in African-centered social science, where one of the goals of European historiography or anything else, is to make us believe that if we fail, that if something happens to us, that is our individual fault. It's not something caused by them. And that's not to say that we don't have our own power. We're not even getting into that argument. But the goal is to make us think. So you have people who were destroyed by Europeans in academia, and they come away because of this mentality. They come away thinking that it's something that they did, that they didn't do correctly, not understanding the insidious nature of Europeans and why they are in the position that they're in now. They're not, and I know I'm going off on a tangent.
No, Baba, no. I feel like Baba second right. He said, deliver the word, Baba. Keep going.
we don't understand. The questions we don't ask, like the murdering. We don't ask ourselves how Europeans got into this position in the first place and how they've been able to maintain this position now. Okay, they're in this position because they're doing the same things that they were doing before. They haven't stopped. They just dressed it up a little bit. It's called sophistication. They haven't changed anything. So the media control of our interpretation of reality is to benefit them because they control the media. They control what young folks can tell you. They control the music.
Absolutely.
They control what comes out, what doesn't come out.
Absolutely.
Okay. They control who the first Africans to enter into the white baseball league, because they picked the one who's going to be most receptive to being called in and being spit on, and the person who had the smoothest composure, and that person became the first African to become a member of the white National League.
Facts.
We don't ask ourselves, how are they able to do this? How are they able to do this? Because all we're seeing is their smiles. All we're seeing is the chump change that they pass on to us. All we're seeing is them allowing these black first to be promoted. We're not even going to talk about black first either in terms of what that says about our genius. Is non-existent. But 9/11 to me is very critical. And if I hadn't seen the fly, I'd forgotten that today was 9/11, because of course it's not something that I celebrate or give much
energy to.
Energy to, yes. But we have to look at the larger picture of why they are so hated. This guy named Abraham, he wrote a book called The Mind of Europe. Mind of Europe or Mind of Africa? Was that whatever one it was. And it was a good book. But in it, he was talking about, I extended his discussion to say that there is a spirit that a people operate in. It's like Mama Rumba's a Sealy. There's a spirit that guides, that comes at their beginning. It's the spirit that designed their mythology in their minds, designed them so that they can create a mythology that reflects their interpretation of the divinity. There's a spirit that's not changing. There's a European spirit that has taken all of the oracles of Ma'at and flipped them upside down and glorified them, because that spirit is the complete and total opposite of that. Okay, I saw someone right up here, evil. Yes, this is spirit. To me, that's a very evil spirit.
Bob, I'm sitting here. Look, you got me thinking about Dr. Amos Wilson right now, because he said the only way that he can control us the way they do is to make us a backwards people, to take everything we have and just flip it. That's what he said. They had to make us a backwards people.
They have done that. And as Bobby Wright said, they control the institutions out of which we gain our understanding of that. So the family, that's supposed to be the first place of socialization. And if the parents are looking at the world mentalcidally or through the Europeans' eyes, then the children are going to look at the world in that way. They're not going to understand who they are. They're going to look at what's African as something backward, archaic, old. They're going to dismiss the idea of tradition. They're going to try to dismiss the idea of culture. And Europeans have us doing that because it favors them. I'm going to keep saying that 1,000 times.
Say it again, Bob.
They're not doing this just because they don't have anything else to do. And they're not doing it. They are doing this. That is how they maintain their position of domination on this planet, by controlling other people, particularly us. What we have to understand this science thing. And science is simply the scientific method. If you follow the scientific method, then you're practicing science. But there's good science and there's bad science. All science is not good. Questions asked or answers sought. All science is not good. Okay. It was science that went into all of the scientific journals and was all in all of the graduate schools and the science research centers and among all the politicians that said African people are biologically, genetically inferior to Europeans. That was science. That was, I'm not gonna say that was science.
Yeah, Bobby. You're speaking of scientific racism.
Yes, that's bad science. Eugenics. That's racism. That's science. It's still science. We can't dismiss that as saying it's not science. And once we do that, then we start making wrong assumptions about the conclusions that science is making. And we get into this thing where science is self-correcting. Science is political. Okay. Politics are not self-correcting. If you have a people who's aspiring to be supremacists or to be supreme, because they're aspiring to that. And that really gets me when people who should know better say white supremacy. There's no such thing as white supremacy. They are aspiring to supremacy. They don't have it. They're aspiring to it. But this science that we're looking at, we have to look at it through politicized eyes. Okay, we have to understand that the conclusions that we are reaching, we have to ask ourselves whether go back to Touré and Hamilton. Every statement is political, so everything that it says fits a political agenda. So the question is, whose politics does it serve? It's not serving our politics because we don't control this reality. We're not in a position to dictate that. And as bad as that may sound or make us feel or what have you, blah, blah, blah. No, we're not in control. We're not in control of that. We are trying to defend who we are. But we are not in control. We have to stop and look at what they have done. That's about teaching me. You want to do some research, dig into what they have done. We have to stop and look at what they have done and rationalize. This takes you to a whole nother level of thinking, where not only did they do this to the world, okay, and some people are saying, now did they do this to divinity? Because if we're simply physical carriers of spirit and the damage was done to us, the damage was also done to spirit. So they've done damage to divinity. It's so insignificant or trivial that it doesn't mean anything to spirit as a whole, but they've still done some damage. We can't just limit it to that. And when we take it beyond that, then we really begin to understand the magnitude of what they have done. But even beyond that, they have rationalized it. They have made everything that they've done. They made all of this damage, all this murder that they've done on this planet. They've made it seem like the other people's fault or something that they didn't do or something that humans do. So they didn't do anything but follow a human model. And we're, of course, upset about it because we weren't the ones that were able to do it. We're not in the position to do it. So we have to look at what they have done. We have to look at their definitions, things like civilization, which we utter words without thinking about what we're saying all the time. Okay. Civilization is based on the root word civil. Civil is how people treat each other. It's not a statement about technology. It's got nothing to do with technology. I mean, technology comes out of that. And of course, the technology really follows the mind of the people. So African people historically have a mind. Okay. When Edie and I were trying to figure out who to study on the continent, what ethnic group to study on the continent. And she said to us, it doesn't make a difference because the spirit of all ethnic groups on the continent is the same. It's the same spirit. So it doesn't make a difference who you study. So that spirit, we have to ask ourselves, what kind of a spirit, what kind of a people would decimate entire other peoples just to steal their stuff?
Just to steal your land, your resources,
your people.
Your people.
Just so they can do whatever they want to do to the women and the children. What kind of people, and the men in this case, is because now we're seeing, of course, this rise in effeminized, homosexualized African males.
Facts.
And there's a reason for that. There's a very important reason for that, because they understand that they are at war. We don't get that, but they understand that they're at war. And that means that you need to remove the army. But that spirit, what kind of spirit? This is something that I've mulled over for years. What kind of spirit? What depth of evil? What depth of manipulation, as Marimba Ani talks about when she said a rhetorical ethic, where they will look at other people to see what they're like, and then they'll mimic that so that other people think that they're like them, and then they will do the damage that they intended to do in the first place. What kind of people, what kind of mind would go on this murderous, centuries-long rampage against humanity and then pretend that they didn't do it? And then make it seem like this is the natural order of evolution. And then make it seem like these people did it to themselves. And then set these people up to destroy themselves and come in as these people's savior. That's a pattern that we see repeatedly in colonized, neo-colonized, and today still neo-colonized Africa, around the world, where they come in, they create chaos, they set two people against each other, and then these people are such chaos, they call in Europeans to help them.
That's what happens. And we've seen it, Baba, 1,000 times. That's what happens.
Absolutely. Over and over and over again. So really, I would argue this is a conversation about reconceptualizing, where we return terms to their right definitions. To say that this is a civilization. I don't call European society and culture a civilization, because I'm not basing my definition of civilization on how tall the highest skyscraper is. How many horsepower the latest car has? Okay, how many warheads can one missile carry? I'm not basing it on that. What's the longest ship and the fastest ship, and how many aircraft can this aircraft carrier carry? I'm not basing my definition on civilization. I'm basing my definition on the word, and the word's root is civil. And civil is a word that describes how people treat each other, and it's talking how people treat each other with respect. So this is not a civilization. How you gonna have a civilization when you have homeless children, when you have children who are prostituting themselves on the streets? That's not a civilization.
It's not.
It's barbarity.
It's barbaric, exactly.
That's not civilization. But we're using that word as if they are that. The same thing we're doing, we're playing around with the word human. We're doing exactly the same thing. And of course, Europeans create words or create definitions for words that removes their guilt, I really shouldn't say guilt because there isn't really guilt there, but removes their difference, removes them from being an oddity on this planet, something Francis Chris Wilson articulated so well. So you use the word human and you give it a definition that fits you. Okay, so anybody born, according to the European definition of human, is a human being. Anybody born. So serial killers, people who've killed 30, 40, 50, 60 people are human, according to their definition. And of course, I thought about that many times. How many Europeans, how many Africans received capital punishment or were outright murdered? Well, that is outright murder if you're innocent. During the time of our enslavement and during Jim Crow period because of white serial killers in the South. Okay, all you got to do, you can't defend yourself. This guy goes kill somebody. He said, yeah, he did it. And this guy, serial killers are not new in European society. This is a long-standing tradition, just like cannibalism is a long-standing tradition in European society. It speaks to the spirit of that people, how you would have that as part of your norm. Amos and Wilson, that word crimogenic, where your society, you have a society that naturally produces a disproportionate number of criminal behavior and criminals. Okay, so that there's a certain mentality. We're not understanding that mentality. If we understand that mentality, then we really wouldn't need to watch the news, except maybe to keep up with current events, because we know what the result would be.
Absolutely.
I haven't been wrong in 30 some years because I understand their spirit. I understand exactly what they're about. So this, when I look at civilization in terms of this definition, we have to have a definition. All of our definitions should come from our ancestors. Every single one of them. But we're adopting their definition of this. So they qualify no matter what they do. No matter how they act, no matter what they say, no matter what they do to other people, they still are human. They still qualify as being human because of the way that it's defined. They can call other people less than human because that's part of the propaganda, but they're always going to be human because of the way that they have defined it. And that includes all of them with all their abnormalities, oddities, perversions, etc., etc. They are still human. Our ancestors didn't see it that way because they understood the value of evidence. They understood that you have to grow. You're supposed to develop. You know, we talk about, you know, I'm a whatever in progress, or, you know, individual in progress, what have you. But we don't understand the essence of that coming out of our ancestors. We often will use that just to cover up our errors, you know, instead of trying to understand that in terms of this is a developmental process, that we're supposed to be moving in a particular direction. We are talking about a tradition. And I'm not even going to deal with statements about we're all human and this is only different cultural traits, because culture is a manifestation of the people. Your ancestors understood quite well what the Greeks were about and what the Romans were about. That's why they said that their language was one of noise and confusion. These are things that we haven't done because we haven't gone back further than their story. So we stop at where they tell us. They've even defined culture for us wrong. But in order to keep the peace, in order to be at peace with Europeans, in order to receive their acceptance and believe in their science, then we walk around acting like they are us and we are them. That's been a long road for them, trying to turn us into them. So now we're looking at what they do as normal and natural for humans, just in terms of sexual insanity. When we first came here, we were not like that. We were nothing like that. We didn't behave like that. There's no record of that being the case. I talk about that all the time, how if Africans were homosexual, or if you found homosexuality in traditional African society, then the way that Europeans talked about it as being so bad, you would have found that written up in all their scientific journals, their newspapers, their magazines, everywhere. And there's no evidence anywhere of them saying anything about Africans being homosexual. Anywhere.
No, it's not.
Anywhere. And you know that they would have exploited that to no end. So the things that we're doing now, the things that we're glorifying now, okay, we just look at, we were talking about Ghana, Mali, and Songhai the other day, and how Europeans were surprised at the level of honesty among the people. And you're going to be surprised because that's not what you're used to. That's not what you've seen. You don't get surprised. I would, if I came from a dishonest society and went to another dishonest society, I wouldn't be surprised at the dishonesty there. So when they came to Africa and they were writing about what they saw in Ghana, what they saw in Mali, and what they saw in Ghana, Mali, Songhai, they were surprised. They were literally surprised at the level of honesty they found, because that was not what they came from. We can talk about it in all kinds of areas. The story about the European who died, I believe it was Mali, either Mali, Songhai, and the government officials reached out to his family, his relatives, and they told him, we have his possessions, we have him, you come and get his body, etc., etc. When they came, they were in shock because all of his belongings were still there. They were surprised because it was still there. We're not doing comparisons. We're not going back in time. That's something that I find with a lot of young folk. They act like what they see now is the way that it's always been.
And it's not.
It's not. It's nothing like it's always been. We have been through what can be called a school, where when we entered this school, we were us. And over time, as we have progressed in time and moved through the grades, we have become more like them. And because humans like to feel good about who they are, and we're defending that like it's us. And we don't see any way of changing it. We don't believe that we can be African, so we scoff at the people who are trying to be who we are. We ridicule them. We talk about them like culture is culture. We talk to them about them like, we're all human. We're just deviations. And that was one of the things that so many of our scholars talked about, how we were being measured by how close we were to Europeans, that we were somehow just, especially when we talk about the children, other folks, we were just somehow not deviations, but we just weren't. We were colored Europeans, but inferior. Okay, we weren't something separate or unique. White is in total opposition to the Ma'at system, complete and total opposition to it. And we don't understand that because we don't understand Ma'at. Most of us don't know. I mean, I'm seeing folks who have the Ma'at poster on their wall and they're practicing the exact opposite.
That's a fact, though, Baba.
And that's one aspect.
And the Ankh, look, the Ankh and everything else.
Yes. One of the things I really see that we have imitated so well is that contradiction, where we have reached the point where if I can say that I'm something or I can pretend to be something, I become that in fact, like Europeans do. Our ancestors didn't play that game.
No, they didn't.
And if you were something, it was because there was evidence of you being that. Not because you claim to be it, but in this society, we can walk around saying, I'm a thug. You know,
you got the men now can say they women, the women now can say they're men. Now you can identify as a tree, a cat, and people are supposed to accept you for what you identify as. That's literally the sick society that we live in.
Yes, yes. So we don't go back. We won't go back. Okay. Let Africans.
Yeah, don't pay them. I was just clicking on comments, Baba. Baba.
This is what's amazing to me. You have people who are so menticidal that they find it necessary to come into a space where there's a discourse about what it means to be African, so that they can infuse confusion into it.
Yes, exactly. That's why
chaos. Just so they can create chaos. It's like that's their mission. Instead of taking the energy and going somewhere, be among those who agree with that nonsense.
Exactly.
You know,
menticide.
Yeah, that's deep menticide.
Yeah.
So one of the other things I wanted folks to look at is that all people go through development from, if you will, barbarity to the point of being civilized. This is supposed to be a natural evolutionary thing in my mind. It's supposed to be a natural evolutionary thing. So each of these stages of development that people go through, it has a moral and ethical component to it, where you are supposed to become more developed in your sense of right and wrong, in your sense of your connectedness to spirit or being spirit. And that's supposed to evolve and progress the same for all societies, maybe not at the same speed, maybe not at the same time frame, but every society, just like every child, if you're familiar with Piaget's cognitive levels of development in children in psychology, every child is supposed to go through four major stages in there, from pre-operational, and then they go all the rest. They go through these stages in development, which helps them to think at a certain level that allows them to think at the age that they're supposed at the age that they're at. And societies, I argue, go through this same process. Now, with these children, they might not go through them at the same speed. Okay, they might mess up one or miss one, but they got to come back and get it in order to move forward, or they don't develop fully, or they don't develop fully. Society is the same thing, and what I would argue we need to look at is that in terms of societies, because society is simply a whole bunch of individuals.
Facts.
If we understand European culture and society, we can even see where this happened to them, where African society, it went through this process over many, many, many thousands of years. You could even say hundreds of thousands of years, depending upon where you want your timeline to begin. And we went through this process of development, including that moral, ethical development, where Ma'at was maybe, if you will, the apex, the top of that development. Europeans came on the scene when Ma'at was already in place, which was a mistake of our ancestors to assume that all people, everything that walked on 2 feet, acted like them, like us. That was a major mistake. And we're supposed to learn from our mistakes.
Let me ask you a question, though, Baba. They already had something in place I know that we had stages, right? Like you said, all humans go through stages. And so our ancestors believe that, look, in order for you to be human, you had to possess certain characteristics. So when the Yorugu, when we encountered the Yorugu, why didn't we apply that standard to them?
Because of that thing Marimba talks about called the rhetorical ethic. Listen, we can't assume that Europeans are stupid. they're what they say, genius, death, destruction, and domination. Genius, Johnny Clark called the evil genius. So it is a genius at work, but it's just an evil genius. You got good science and bad science. You have an evil genius at work. So what they do, and what they do so well, it's like when I tell warriors, the first thing that the European is going to do when they meet you is try to assess immediately whether you're a friend or foe before anything else. Well, that tells them what to do relative to you. They want to know whether you're friend or foe. They don't want to know your age, any of this. They're trying to assess whether you're friend or foe. When they came, knowing their inferiority, as Francis Cress Welsing again points out repeatedly, they studied us to see how we behaved, to see how we thought, to see how we were morally, ethically, etc., and they mimicked that. They are good liars. They are good deceivers. So they had us believing that they were about the business of honoring us, of respecting us, that they too were like us, because they could imitate that so well. Just like we see so many folks in the quote unquote conscious community, they're able to imitate what it means to be African, but the heart is not there. The spirit is not there.
The spirit isn't there.
Not there.
We were talking about that last night, Bobby, and people got mad with me. They got mad with me. They got mad with me. The sisters came on last night, and we were talking about, like you said, the spirit of some of these brothers in the community. There wasn't no man bashing, none of that. We were just presenting our, concerns, and some people just couldn't handle it. Like, it's these dudes, man, like you said, they're great imitators. They present themselves as teachers and conscious and African-centered. And then when the sisters start, following them and getting involved, they show us something different. And so we had that conversation, last night. But please continue, Baba.
Oh, and if I may add to that, it's sisters as well, which of course,
absolutely, absolutely.
It's not just brothers, but the point is that we have so many.
Absolutely.
We have so many, and we're in denial because then you take away that person's act. You take away their ability to pretend to be African. In many cases, there's nothing else that they can be. So a lot of people run toward us not because they love us, but because they're not accepted where they want to be accepted. I was talking about some of the administrators at some of our HBCUs. They don't want to be there, but and they are thieves. Many of them are thieves, but they're there because white boys will not allow them to be in their colleges stealing there. That's their domain to steal. That's their territory to steal from. So it's not that these people want to be here, is that they have no other place to be, or they can't be any other place and get the respect that they are getting. We have to check that. That's one of the most important things in terms of us re-Africanizing, Sankofizing, however you want to say it, where we have to judge people, check people on whether what they think is the same as what they do, is the same as what they say. Our ancestors said that contradiction cannot exist. Okay, if you're going to be a Negro, then think like a Negro, act like a Negro, speak like a Negro. Fine, be a Negro. But don't come over here pretending that you're something else. That's creating a lot of confusion. In fact, it's reached a point now, as far as I'm concerned, places like Atlanta, which is supposed to be the Black Mecca, I would say 3/4, maybe 4/5, maybe 5/6 of the quote unquote conscious community is not African. Okay, Baba Sanyika talked in one of his books about in terms of educating our children in these independent schools. He said, some of them are just pretending to be African-centered in that they are teaching children about Africa and Black first and our story and the rest of us. African-centered schools teach their children to be African. That's a whole different level of thinking. That's a whole different level of being. And most of us know the information. We've read the books. There's another example. One of the Babas in Louisiana, he had a men's study group, and this study group existed was in existence for over 10 years, and they read our stuff. They read our stuff, and they talked about our stuff, and they discussed, our stuff, Chancellor Williams, Deacon, all of our stuff. And every year they would give to a Black charity that was doing the work. And that year, the treasurer told them, they didn't have the money to do that, so they need to find another way. So they came up with the idea of doing a raffle. And so the treasurer, again, we don't have the money to buy the TV, whatever we're going to give away. So one of the members of the group said, well, we can just say that we have the TV, and we can just say we have these other prizes. And of course, the winner will be somebody who we know someplace way, and we don't have to give it away, and we can just collect that money. And some of the members in the group agreed with him, and he freaked out because he said, oh, they read the stuff. They didn't internalize it. They didn't practice it. And this is what I see. People who have read the stuff, they talk about it, they quote, et cetera, but they haven't internalized it. You don't see it in their words. You don't see it in their being, in their existence. You don't see them being, like we have elders. I've encountered a number of elders. Interesting. One of them has been on your program, and I will allow that person to remain nameless, who, because they don't like what you write, particularly what you write about homosexuals, they won't speak.
Wow.
And these are supposed to be elders.
These are elders, right? That's what I was like, wow. Like,
we call as elders.
Wow.
Once they find out that you wrote this or you said that, they won't speak to you. I had two who would not speak to me, which of course is, at first it's a shock, but then okay, I get it now. I understand. I'm not gonna mess up my day, but it takes that while to understand, because they don't understand. Just like we don't understand civilization. Oh, perfect analogy to me of how are they able to do this? Why did the ancestors, who were practicing Ma'at, who were being, not practicing, because that in European side, you can practice something without it being you, who were being Ma'at, who were being African. The movie They Live, which we talked about for half a second.
Yes, before we went live.
Yeah, if folks have not watched the movie They Live, and it's not me glorifying this movie, but watch the movie, understand the glasses, understand the lens that these guys are looking through, and they see the real things. And of course, I always tell warriors, when you start talking that talk, when you start moving in a particular way, they're going to be saying, we have one here. We have one here. They're going to talk to each other. And you're not part of that conversation. Black folks think that because they're around white folks that they're part of their conversation. There was a real interesting study that was done that looked at neighborhoods that were predominantly Black that had some whites in it, and neighborhoods that were predominantly white had some Blacks in it. What was interesting was that in the predominantly white neighborhoods that had some Blacks in it, every white person who was interviewed knew where every Black person in that community lived. Every single one. But when you looked at the Black people with the white people in their community, most of them didn't know. They knew that there was some whites there, but they didn't know where they lived. Many of them didn't know where they lived. So they know it's that way of thinking, that spirit of that people, of those beings, however you want to phrase it. They understand that they are at war. They do the counts. They do the research. There's a reason why they're in the position that they are in. If we want to talk about theories of European origins or beginnings, we can talk about, Cresswelling's theory. We can talk about Sheikh Anta Diop, which we're pronouncing Diop, but it's correctly pronounced Diop. Yes. We can talk about them coming out of a lab. We can talk about lizards. We can talk about aliens. But to me, the most important thing is this history, which is the evidence. Okay. We can talk about labs all we want to, but you can't show me that lab. That doesn't mean that's not true.
Right.
Okay. You can talk to me about lizards all day long. That doesn't mean that's not true. Okay. You can show me tails on babies, all the rest of you, but that doesn't mean anything compared to historical evidence. And the history reveals spirit. Just like if I'm meeting somebody for the first time, and I can't base, if I want to become a part of this person's life, I can't base my desire to be with that person on what they showed me on that day. at that moment. I need to know their history. I need to know their story. I need to know what they're about. I need to know what they were doing 10, 15, 20 years ago. I need to know them. And we're up here judging Europeans on something that they told us today. We're measuring them. We'll measure us very different than them. We'll measure everybody else different than them. But them, they get the carte blanche. They get the immediate okay. They're looking at some of the posts that came up, and one of the first ones used the word oxymoronic to describe the idea of Europeans and humans. That was a patently flawed connection, just like white lady. The things are total contradiction to them because it's based on the evidence, and our ancestors based it on evidence. You weren't born human. Okay? You had to be more than just socialized into it. You had to live in a community of humans, of people who had developed into humans, and you had to develop yourself into human because good behavior, good speech is a choice.
Teach, Baba. That's where I wanted to go next. How did our ancestors define human? How did they develop us to, that's what I wanted to go. Go ahead, Baba.
It was a choice. And it was a choice not only based upon what you had learned about yourself and your desires and all the rest of that. It was a choice also based upon how the people around you acted, how they spoke, what you could tell from their thinking, because of course you can't tell what anybody's thinking, but how you could, how they said things, how they worded things, how they acted, the instructions that they gave. Proverbs are a great indicator of the humanity of African people. I don't know of one proverb that leads you wrong. I don't know one proverb that doesn't lead you toward, improvement. I've never come across one. I've read thousands and thousands and thousands of proverbs, but I haven't come across one which would make you go wrong, which would lead you down the wrong path. All of them are designed to make you think at a higher level, to think better, to become a better person. So we're talking about a people who socialized their children to be good based upon what are considered to be human qualities. A human quality isn't murdering people. That doesn't mean that somebody doesn't slip up or every once in a while and become so enraged at whatever the situation is that they didn't do it. Okay, that's not a human quality. It's based upon human quality. You go to the beginning. Africans understood civilization and how people are supposed to behave by looking at the universe and seeing the models there and seeing the patterns there and seeing the behavior there and incorporate that into their being. They were not inductionists like Europeans are, looking at themselves, trying to define themselves according to whatever, and then trying to describe and make the universe fit that. African people were deductionists. They looked at the universe and tried to model this because they knew the universe was greater than them, immeasurably greater than them. So you might see an African, such as myself, studying an anthill, trying to understand how they're doing what they're doing and what they're doing and why they're doing it, because that's natural. And we are natural people. We're not trying to be machines or trying to create ourselves in some flawed image that we have manufactured out of our fantasy, out of our science fiction. So you took that knowledge, that understanding of how the universe works, okay, of genuine love, of nothing that is done that is not connected to your feelings, to your emotion, to your spirit. That nothing is done just to be done. That's why, you had this big debate, art for art's sake. African didn't have art for art's sake. Okay. Except for the tourist industry, it's still not art for art's sake.
Everything had a meaning and a message. There's always a meaning and a message attached. Facts.
Everything had a message attached. Everything had a message attached to it. Everything attached to it. And every message was supposed to guide you. You were supposed to heed the messages because messages were your wisdom. The messages were your wisdom. So you take a people like that who are the same everywhere. I don't care if they didn't call it one continent. Some people are, regardless. They came from one people. They came from one group. And that group was about the business of being human. And they carried that with them because they valued that, because they understand the importance of it, because of how they saw themselves. Because it's how they saw their relationship to Mother Earth. They understood that, Sasina was their origin. Without Mother Earth, there was nothing. unlike a Jacob Carruthers said, I posted the other day, how Europeans see the earth essentially as a bee, something to be controlled, something to be beaten into submission and to be controlled. And they have acted like that throughout time. Okay? There was no such thing as an extinct species of animal before Europeans. I'm talking about in terms of the existing during the times of quote unquote humans. Now you got all kinds of animals on the endangered list, endangered species list. And of course, this is classic European. You go in and you destroy something, and then you bring it back to life and you become the savior. And everybody forgets that you did the destruction. That's why children today, you talk to our children, they don't remember Malcolm. Less known are enslavement. So whatever lies Europeans tell them, oh, we came here to find jobs, they believe it because we're not telling them the truth. We're not making them understand our story. And we're the only people who are doing that. We're the only people who are doing that. Anybody who comes to power does not leave their traditions behind.
Never.
I don't know of any group who's come to power who leaves their traditions behind, who leaves their story behind. I don't know of any. So our definition, all of these definitions, like what it means to be human, that's way back there. That's archaic. That's old. Nobody does that anymore. Everybody acts in this way. And this is what it means to be human. And when you're using today's definition, the Europeans become the model humans. They become who we base our behavior on. Because they're the ones that are dictating. They're the scientists. Okay, obviously they're the best humans because they're in charge. I had a theology student come to me and say, well, obviously this is a black male. He said, obviously God favors Europeans because if he didn't, they wouldn't be in charge. I'm like, okay, this is the thinking of many of us.
Oh, no, but yeah, Bob, and I want to just chime in for a sec. I had a student, I was teaching a grad course called Digital Communications, at Morgan. And I had 2 graduate students who were from West Africa. I want to say they were from Nigeria. And they had names like one guy's name was Peter, the other guy's name, it was like biblical names. So I'm just throwing them out there. One guy's name may have been Peter, another guy's name may have been Joseph or something like that. And I was talking to them. I said, well, what is your name? What is your given name? And so then they told me what their given name was. And it seems like it was like a Yoruba, it was a Yoruba name, an Ifa name. And I said, do you practice, Ifa? And they said, no, they said, we're Christians. And I said, well, why? And they said, well, if our God was supreme or all powerful, right? Why did we get conquered? So and they told me that was the mentality of their parents. So if the Ephi God, and I'm just saying God, but if the Ephi deity was so great and so powerful, then why were these white folks who had a Christian God able to come over and colonize us, enslave us? And so a lot of them, like you said, that's their thinking, Baba. That's their thinking.
It's scary because with each generation that becomes stronger thinking. And there isn't I'm not saying there's not anybody interjecting the African understanding into it. But Europeans have become so good at controlling the media. Okay?
Yes.
Even though Facebook is technically minor, you go in a particular direction and they're going to find ways to silence you. Just like we talked about in terms of me being on here. I've had the same issue when I was on BB to Mikasa, which is a BB to me now, where I'm doing a class and somehow it's not transmit, and so all of these things, that's not accidental. I know it's not accidental because if this is a Negro program, there would never be any interruptions. No, there would never be any static. Everything would always be clear. You had no problem, and that's not accidental. And we of course also relative to these boys, we've been told by many, demonstrated by many that religion is a political tool. It's a weapon of war.
Absolutely, it is political. So it is political.
You get renamed when you're Christian. You're not Christian. You're Europeanized because you're given a European name. Okay, if you're given a name when you're baptized, you're given a European name.
A European name.
a European name. It's not like you're giving any old name anywhere, whatever, you're allowed to keep your own. You're giving a European name. That means that you are being inducted into the European Hall of whatever. It's the same thing. I guess we keep coming back to this definition of being human. I've read a number of pieces that talked about how you couldn't you couldn't switch your spiritual system. Okay, if you were born in this community, you couldn't go in that community and part of that, because your spiritual system is part of everything. It's not just part of, not just Sunday service. It's part of everything. It's part of everything in unity, part of everything in your family, it's part of everything in you. So you didn't have proselytizing. You didn't have people trying to convert people over to their spiritual system, because that wouldn't make sense. Spiritual systems were not used as weapons against other people. This began with the Arabs of Islam. And they would come in because they understood that it's like whoever's at the head of your religion, that's who you're loyal to. That's who you're faithful to.
That's a fact.
Islam, Holy Land, is in the middle of Arab land. So those folks who are practicing that, regardless of the principles, because you're going to find the principle the same regardless. I don't care if this gets into whatever kind of trouble when people don't understand, because I know people and I have friends who are Islamic. I know people have friends who are Christian. They understand exactly what I'm saying. So you brought in this religion into Africa and you converted people into this, and you converted key people into this in order to gain their loyalty to you, not to gain their loyalty to the religion per se, but to gain their loyalty to you, because you're the head of the religion is you, the head the head of Christianity. Yes.
No, I'm just saying, Bob, I just wanted to interject because that's what the Portuguese did when they went into the Congo. Remember when they brought Christianity into the Congo? What did they do? They changed their names. After they changed their names, remember, they started sending their children. I'm talking about the Congolese. They were sending their children to Europe to be educated. They brought them back. They were giving them land and giving them different things. So like you said, their loyalty then was to them. Once they converted them to Christianity, the loyalty, like you said, it wasn't to, I guess the Christ, Christ or God. It was to white folks once they converted them.
Absolutely. In the end, Christian loyalty is to the Vatican. In the end, that's where the loyalty is. So the Vatican is, that's white land. That's the center of white, if you will. So we have to remember, African people didn't use spirituality in that way. Okay, it wasn't you couldn't be two-faced. You couldn't talk loving people and loving the planet and being devout and all the rest of this and not stealing and all the rest of it and then do it. Okay, we saw that when it's hard to speak of the contradictions because there are so many. And African people are not a contradictory people. We find that written in all of the writing having to do with African people that rule against being contradictory, that rule against your tongue saying something that your mind is not about, that rule against deceiving people into thinking that you are something that you are not.
That you're not.
We find that practiced. So it's to back to this definition of being human. You had a people who created communal society, just like you have people in Europe who created capitalist system. And I don't want to hear about capitalism as all economy, because people develop economies to fit their cultural personality. Capitalism fit a certain cultural personality, and it fit it perfectly. It wouldn't have fit the African personality. But the Africans had an economy just like the Europeans had an economy, just like Asians had an economy. It just was, the African just wasn't capitalistic. Just because you have wealth, just because you sell and buy goods, just because you have, that doesn't mean you're capitalist. Capitalism is a mentality. Go read Max Weber's The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. Go read some stuff by Max Weber. You'll understand what capitalism really is, not just some YouTube thing. read the source of the study of the understanding of capitalism. Go read Max Weber.
So and that was powerful what you said. That was powerful what you said, Baba. You said that an economy is created to fit your cultural personality. That was powerful. Please continue, Baba.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And Ms. Wilson made the point. The economy exists before money. The economy is a set of relationships.
Facts.
Those set of relationships determine how people interact and how goods and services are distributed, how they're created, okay, how they're used. Okay, that's your economy. The relationships exist between the people. And Europeans have a social contract amongst themselves, even though they may not live together. They have joined together to exploit everybody else. But you have to look at communalism as the product of a people's mind. Capitalism is a product of people's mind. Communalism is a product of people's minds. You can't have communalism among a dishonest people because communalism is based upon accountability. It's based upon people seeing what they do as impacting on other people and doing good for other people so that it'll be good to them. Everybody gets what they need. Everybody gets fed. You don't have laziness there because if then you're not going to be contributing anything and people are going to treat you accordingly. I've read many continental African scholars correcting that lie that Europeans have perpetrated on African people for a long time, that communalism produces lazy people because nobody's forced to work. That's one of the biggest lies on this planet. In order for you to have communalism, you have to have a certain kind of cultural personality that brings that into existence. You have to have the production of a particular type of people who create this, who make this happen. And you can't have communalism among lying, thieving murderers. You can have capitalism. And in fact, if you don't have lying, thieving murderers, you can't have capitalism. You can't exist. Capitalism can't exist without that. Capitalism can't exist without deceit. Capitalism can't exist without manipulating and exploiting people. It can't do that. And it reflects the mentality of Europeans back to proto-European society in Greece and Rome. People want to separate Greece and Rome from Europe. These are proto-European. These were the forerunners of European society in the sense that they were the same thing, but they played around with the ideas. They played around with what it meant to be European. Okay, Europeans now perfected that. But I think it's important for people to understand how economic systems come into existence. And communalism could not have come into existence in traditional European society because of people's attitude toward each other, because of people's attitude toward things. And you got, and in fact, in the Protestant ethic and Fear of Capitalism, Max Weber talks about how Protestantism rose primarily because the idea of the Protestant ethic at that time, and still, I mean, it's become more sophisticated, but still, the more you have, then the greater the chances of you getting into heaven. So this is a validation of exploit. It didn't make a difference how you got what you got. That was an important key there. It didn't make a difference how you got richer than everybody else, how you got rich. Your ability to get into heaven was based upon how much you had when you died.
And that makes sense if that would be a part of their belief because they are very materialistic people. So it makes sense that would be a part of their doctrine.
Absolutely. And we have to look at Africans. We're talking about being human. Africans are individualistic. Okay, we talk about individualism. Africans, and in fact, the Akan in particular, and I haven't looked at all groups, but the Akan are very, very competitive in terms of being individualistic. But there's a different kind of individualism than the extreme individualism of Europeans, where it's all about me and whatever I do to exploit other people. If I steal somebody, as long as I didn't get caught, then I won. I'm good. If I rape somebody, as long as I didn't get caught. If I murder somebody, as long as I didn't get caught, I'm good. There's no moral anything. Individualism in African society was based upon the idea that the more you are competing with people who are after the same thing, the better you're going to be. And your betterness, since you are accountable to the community, is going to make the community better. So the better the individuals are, the better the community is going to be. That's not complicated. But in European society, they would have you believe that traditional African society was like the Borg on Star Trek or bees in a hive where nobody's thinking. They would have us believe that this is what communalism is about. Okay, a bunch of mindless people walking around following whatever the, I don't know, the king or the queen or whoever was in charge. But that's not what it was about. Humans. One of the verses that is said so much in the Bible. Okay, you're supposed to help, your neighbor. Somebody needs assistance, you're supposed to help them. And you're not supposed to help them because you can get a tax write-off. You're going to be helping them because you can help them. And a tax write-off comes as an aside, but it will take Western society for you to come up with the idea that there has to be a tax write-off. It will take Western society to come up with the idea that giving hurts you. Giving to people who don't have. Yes. And yes, another thing, African people, they were wealthy Africans.
Absolutely.
They're very wealthy Africans. They're wealthy Africans. What do we know now? The wealthiest man ever walked the face of this planet, Mansa Musa.
Mansa Musa.
Period. They admitted $400 billion in today's money. But you gain wealth so that you would be in a position to assist others. And if we're looking at it logically in terms of Africans, we can say that Mansa Musa really wasn't the richest man in the world. He was part of the richest people in the world because his job was to safeguard and expand the people's wealth.
Ashe.
It was under his control because they allowed him to have it under his control so that he could make it grow. He could make it benefit them, which allowed them to petition him when they needed to petition him for whatever they needed. Whenever they needed it. That's a completely different mentality than here, than in the West. I was just to say in the West among Europeans because America simply knew Europe. It's not separate. There's nothing distinct. There's nothing separate. Maybe a difference in dialect, how words are said or what have you. But
same culture.
It's not a same culture. It didn't change in the middle of the Atlantic anywhere. That's why we have New York, New Jersey, New Hampshire. It's new Europe. It's the same thing. It's just a new place where it is. So we're looking at the things that make, when we're looking at an African definition of being human, we have to look at the things that Africans practice, the way that African people were, because in that we see the definition of what they consider to be human. Humans don't play with Mother Earth. Humans don't litter on the ground. Humans don't take their trash and throw it on the ground because that's throwing dirt in your mother's face. Okay. You don't mistreat children because you're talking about a family, child-centered people. So a person who is a child abuser, and of course, a lot of us have lost our minds through menticide. We don't know any better because we think this is us. I don't remember any reports, and I said Europeans wrote about everything that's supposed to be bad about us. They manufactured all kinds of lies. I don't remember seeing any reports of the abuse of African children. I've never read that anywhere. And we can't say, the divorce, what have you. Divorce we find in every culture, among every people. Okay? Sometimes people just don't get along, or sometimes somebody does something really stupid. So we have to look at that. The fact that African people today, as badly as we've been beaten, as badly as our families have been ripped, torn, shredded, fragmented, we still on this planet today have more extended families than any other people. We still have more grandmothers, grandfathers, aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews, boy down the street who's family, whatever. We still have that than any other people because we still, in parts, even some of us don't recognize it as African, we still are family, child-centered people. We still carry that in the wisdom of the sayings that we don't recognize as coming from Africa, but we say them. I remember my father saying things and my mother saying things that they didn't recognize as African proverbs or African wisdom, but it was passed through the generations.
Facts.
Which speaks to the breaking process, just a piece of the breaking process. Not only did they not allow us to drum or tap our fingers, or because we might speak to them in a language they didn't understand, also didn't allow us to repeat the proverbs. That's how we lost that. They didn't allow us to speak the proverbs. They didn't want us to have that wisdom. They didn't want us to have that way of thinking. That did not fit the European mentality that they wanted to instill in us. Proverbs speak to love. Proverbs speak to treating each other with respect. Proverbs speak to being righteous. And you can't be righteous in a capitalist system where everybody will run you over. You can't be righteous in this. You can't do that. So they had to change all of that. So people who treated their children with respect, who had a whole different mentality toward their elders. Read Fuku House of Congo Art of Babysitting. That's one example. That's the best short read on this. Fuku House of Congo Art of Babysitting, where elders remained respected. They were held in high esteem because of the work that they did, not just because they were old. The eldership is not a job, right? They don't have words for it. It's not eldership is a job. For some, it's a more intense job than when they were warriors, because now you have obligation to give your time to those who are coming behind you, because you're supposed to be looking for what doesn't work and burning it, and looking for what does work and expanding it. So the elder in traditional Africans, unlike Europeans, elder in traditional European society, you go back to the time of caves when elders were discarded over the sides of cliffs if they didn't do it on their own because they were simply mouths to feed.
Yep, and now they do it. Yet now we see them in nursing homes, Bob. They just throw them in nursing homes.
Away from them.
Mm-hmm.
Away from them, as far away from them as they can get. And now, of course, more of us are following suit. You didn't find this among us before. And I can see when somebody gets to the point where they become a serious danger to themselves, where there is some kind of a health issue that the family cannot handle, can't manage, then okay, I can understand it then. But that's a very small fraction.
Absolutely.
Of the elders in our community. But then the elders were understood. That's one of the things that media has done so beautifully. European media has done so beautiful. They've made young folks think that they're as intelligent as the elders, that they're as wise as the elders, because they know some trivia, because they watched a few thousand YouTube videos. So they don't have to listen anymore. You go through the process of separating the children from the elders, and the elders can't lead anymore. So you have people calling elders online all kinds of names, with distinguishing between elders and elders. So in our tradition, the elders, and I talk about when I talk about circles, for folks who have listened to any of my lectures before, an outermost circle were the men, first line defense, and that middle circle was the women. Get past the men, you got to deal with the women. But the women need to be close to the center where the children and the elders were at, because they breastfed and the children needed to eat. But the elders were there. Why? What was their role? Their role was to teach. Who better to teach the children than those who know most about who you are? Nobody. Now we have our elders in European society, in this reality, we get them like they are a waste, like they're infringing on our time. Mm-hmm. They got us here. They got us.
That's a fact.
We're just, what people are they talk about? You separate the tree from the roots. I mean, we're separating ourselves from our ancestors. We separate ourselves from our elders, our closest ancestors, living ancestors, if you will. Trying to act like we're going to remake this. Was that? That wasn't Asa Hilliard. That was Wade Nobles, who talked about how our ancestors, whenever they had some good bread, they made some good bread. They take a piece of that dough and they put it in with the dough for the new bread. They just eat up the old bread, discard it, throw it away, what have you, and then try to create this new loaf. That's what Europeans do. Even though they don't leave their traditions in terms of how they interact with the world. So you have to look at how people who treated their children with respect. I don't know of a record of prostitution on the African continent prior to European Arab invasion. I'm not familiar with one. Jared Clark point the prisons in traditional African society anywhere, no prisons. You have to look at the mind of a people who work like this together, and don't give me the population are larger. You have teeny tiny European populations in prisons who build prisons in their own little towns, in their own little isolated countries, all around wherever they're at, everywhere they went. So You have to look at the mind in terms of defining, reconceptualizing, having a personal definition of what it means to be human, understanding how our ancestors define human by looking how they lived, looking at what they believed, looking at the historical evidence. They didn't have prisons because they knew what being isolated from people did to a spirit. That's the main reason for not having prison. You don't isolate people, put them in solitary confinement. I remember when Sanyika Shakur, Cody Scott came out of prison. He'd been in solitary confinement for like 7 years. And he had to learn how to speak and didn't know them. And now most of the prisons that are being built in this country are simply solitary confinement, a collection of solitary confinement. And guess who's mostly in them? The Supermax prison, the one that's underground.
Us.
It's all solitary confinement cells. Most of the inmates are us. So you can't break. I mean, you want to. They found ways. They've been working so hard at breaking the spirit of African people for so long, and they found a way with black men. Well, they found several ways of black men. One of them is you put them in prison, put them in solitary confinement cells, and you'll break their spirit. Another is you turn them into your daughters, and that breaks their spirit. They don't see any reason to fight you. They see you as someone to love. In fact, someone to prance around in front of so that you can select one of them. But you have to ask yourself, what if we're talking about being human and definitions are all political? What kind of definition for human would that people create? Would he create a definition of human that included serial killing, raping, pillaging, killing people to steal what they have? Go to Ronoko Rashidi's page and look at his discussions on the Tasmanians and the Aborigines of Australia. That'll give you a sampling of what they did on those two islands. Excuse me, on the continent of Australia. And how we laugh at it by laughing at Tasmanian Devil Taz and the cartoons, and that was them making us laugh at ourselves. The same way we think that 666 is the sign of the devil versus having something directly to do with melanin. You have to ask yourself, what kind of definition would these people, your people, have created of being human? And I don't think it would run anywhere near being a child. Everybody can take you for whatever you have. Their definition of being human, if we understand that, as our ancestors did, that we're spirit, and some people like to say, you know, I'm a vessel, human vessel, with giving spirit a human experience, then your definition of human would be mostly spiritual. So if you're not acting in a spiritual way, then obviously you're outside bounds of being human. It's not, to me, things like this are not really complicated. You're welcome, Ward. You're very welcome. More people, we just got to talk about that in school, last week? Because some didn't know, some didn't understand. Of course, some never heard of 666 in the first place. But they're going to hear about it, and when they hear about it, they need to be in the right mind when they hear about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, Baba, I want to thank. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Baba. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I would say we need to have all of our definitions should come out of who we are, not out of who someone sees us as or who they are. Or we can stop playing the game of being African.
Facts. Well, Baba, I do want to do this. Let me drop my bomb for you. Hold on. Had to drop my bomb for you, Baba. I'm telling you, I appreciate every time you come. You bring the fire. The people look, they're dropping fire in the chat. Every time you come on the platform, Baba, you drop so many jewels. And a matter of fact, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna I'm gonna rewatch this. Every time you come on, what I do is after it's already uploaded on YouTube, I sit in my bed and I listen to you again, because it's just so much information, and I can't catch it all. I can't catch it all while we're, conversing, or I'm trying to listen and run the chat. So literally, Baba, after this broadcast is uploaded on YouTube, I'm going to go right in my bedroom and listen to this broadcast again. Like, again, you dropped so much knowledge. I thank you. From the bottom of my heart for being with us. Like I said, you're always on the move. You and Mama Ya, you're always doing something. And I just love how you always, in spite of your schedules, you make time for the community. You make time to be present. You make time to show up. And I appreciate you. We appreciate you, Baba. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. So I don't know if you can see the comments in the chat.
Yes, I can.
I'm trying to show. Yeah, I'm trying to show them on the screen as much as possible. But we thank you, Baba. We love you and we thank you and we appreciate you. I believe in giving people, as my mother would say, give people their flowers while they can smell them. So each time you come on the platform, whenever you compliment Mama Ya comes on, I like to give you your flowers while you can smell them. So thank you for all that you do, Baba. Do you have any closing words for the listening audience?
I want them to be African. That's all. I want them to be African. Also, when we talk about our story real quick, the K-Buka lecture is coming early in November. Everyone should be there. We need to honor our ancestors in this way. So look for the K-Buka lecture. And we appreciate everyone who supports us in every way they do. I'm honored to be here. And I always love being in the presence of warriors. I especially appreciate you, Dr. Maat, for being brave enough to continue to do this work. This is not easy. So much appreciation to you for doing this and for bringing us on and allowing the warriors to have the kind of voice I would argue that they need from folks who love them.
Ashe, thank you so much, Baba. Honored and humbled by your words. And so, Baba, you said the K-Buka, you said it's going to be a lecture when?
The K-Buka lecture is November the 20th.
November the 20th. Okay, just
20th.
As soon as
I'll send out a flyer. I've already made it. So I'll send it to you.
Okay. All right, Baba. So as soon as I know, family, I'll make sure you know. I'll probably be live. Might go live once or twice this week, family, but I'll let you all know via Facebook announcement or YouTube announcement. But thank you so much, family, for joining us tonight. Peace and Black Power.
Let's combat and fight back with maltracks. The war of the minds, they want control of the masses. And Common Core, they dumb us down in the classes. Without knowledge, we can't gain access. Build with the elders, take notes and write classes. We keep whining on the block, how it's gonna stop? Let's start supporting our own, make their supply drop. We buy stocks, then we buy blocks. Cause we know the truth and we tuned in to Dr. Maat.